Hello, welcome to Chapter 8. This is a week where we're spending a little time with the ideas of leadership and teamwork and how they relate or integrate into business ideas. And we saw a little bit of information about leadership in the tail ends of the management week. And so here we're kind of just doing a little catch up and thinking about teams a little bit in Chapter 8. So there's a lot of different terms in here and a lot of different ideas about teams, and I want to put teams kind of on a continuum. You can think of individuals working collectively, which is kind of a team, and then you can, on the other end of the spectrum, you can think about people who have really voluntarily subjugated what's best for them for the good of the whole, which is sort of another end of a team. And you will find teams all across this spectrum where there's a tremendous amount of buy-in, a lot of depth and commitment, and then you'll also find people just coming together to get tasks done. There's no right or wrong on these things. I just want you to be aware that that these things all happen at sort of different levels and different total amounts of commitment. So some of the things that you have to think about with your teams is what or who they're accountable to, whether they're functioning interdependently. You may have multiple teams interacting together, whether or not they're stable or they're more fluid. A lot of teams, particularly in the work environment, they will assemble or coalesce around a particular project, and then they will disband when that project is done. And so they're constantly being sort of created or chartered and then suspended. And what kind of authority the team will have, this is often a source of conflict. When you ask, one of the generally good ideas about management is if you're going to delegate the responsibility, you should also delegate the authority. And so there'll be friction around this area if that's not handled properly. And then, of course, the context, both the social, environmental context, the nature of the company, the type of work, all of these things sort of impact whether or not a team can tackle a project. So different types of teams, you can have a manager-led team, which really, kind of fits into the existing organizational structure, not necessarily dramatically different than whatever the chain of command might be within an entity already. And then you can have self-managed teams, so teams that come together and just self-form, accomplish tasks and then disband and then reform as needed. They tend to sort of elect their own leadership, or leadership just naturally evolves out of the players. Cross-functional teams, this is when you specifically put together a team that has different skill sets. So you might combine managerial accounting expertise with marketing expertise, with product design and engineering expertise to look at a new product offering, so that you make sure that it's looked at from all of those different lenses to make sure that it meets all of the needs of the company, and that it's has the best chance of viability because you've considered all aspects of it. And then virtual teams. This is not really a new type of team. It's just a recognition of the reality that you can collaborate and come together much more easily than you used to be able to because of the online tools. And there are project management tools online, a variety of communication tools, both synchronous and asynchronous communication tools, conferencing ability, all of these things. And they are not something that is left to the big companies anymore. Most of you have access to all of these tools just as individuals already, and all we need to do is think about how to deploy them. So the tasks that teams undertake, there's just a variety of things that teams go after, and here you can look at some of the tasks. Just review this slide. The things that make teams really effective, or can have a negative impact on their effectiveness. First of all, cohesiveness. Lots of times when we think about teams forming, there's sort of this four-step riddle that teams form, and then they storm, which means they get along, then they norm the behaviors, and then they perform. And so these are sort of stages of team evolution. And cohesiveness is not something that just happens automatically. It is built over time as members get to know each other, as they develop trust, as they achieve success together. And so cohesiveness is a process, not something that just happens as a result of the team. And sometimes when new teams are being formed, you have to think about trying to invest in cohesiveness or invest in the team in ways that will allow it to move through the stages so it can start to become high performing. Groupthink is the idea that teams that are too cohesive can see and view the world all from the same lens and can not really challenge each other or come up with new or unique ideas. And so groupthink can be a challenge if a group has been together too much for too long. Cooperation you already know about. There'll be a lot of debate or a source of friction is the appropriate level of management support. Teams need resources, they need time, they need budget, they need a variety of things in order to be successful at what they do. And part of the management process is trying to make sure that the teams can perform because they have what they need to get the job done. Delegation, we've talked about this before, and then of course cooperation, which apparently is listed twice. It's so important. Communication skills. This is just a slide showing the types of communications that come out of teams and ways to think about communicating, both formally and informally. And then, of course, communication types: upward, downward, lateral, horizontal. So teams are often not created to just solve tasks within themselves, therefore tasks across the organization. And so they're going to need communication access to all of the various players that may be part of the solution or problem that they're trying to solve. And again, thinking about more about communication, both internal and external, and then informal and formal. And so there's a lot of communicating going on within an organization, and it's not all following. As a matter of fact, only a small fraction of it is actually following the organizational structure. And so you may design your organizational structure, but this is one of the reasons why people migrate towards the matrix structure, is because there needs to be a lot of communication going on that doesn't follow this structure directly. Marketing people need to be talking to engineering people need to be talking to accounting people. All of these things need to take place. And one of the things that can happen is if you have a very formalized structure and all of these things have to go up and down the organizational structure, it can take forever to get things done. And so an organization will become not very nimble. And so one of the solutions might be these cross-functional teams, but then there's a whole bunch of communicating that then needs to go on in a whole bunch of different directions in order to make these work. And it can create challenges for an organization. And that is a very rapid-fire overview of some of the issues facing teams. There are several good books out there related to teams and high-functioning teams. And I think that personally, a lot of work that I see that needs to be done by organizations is starting to be fairly complex work. I mean, problems are not really easy to solve. All the easy problems have been solved. And so a lot of solutions development, forward progress in organizations is really the result of teams coming together to solve problems that are, quite frankly, beyond the scope of a single person. And so I think that as a result of this, project work, project management, team-based solutions are really growing all the time. And so developing some skill sets in this area, whether they be technical skills or leadership skills or communication skills, can really help you to add value to organizations, which can allow you to then move up and prosper within that economic structure. So things to think about. Developing your team skills is always a great idea. So thanks again for joining us, and we will convene again for the next chapter.